Hello guys and girls, Dave here from Player TV, back once again. Hope you're well. Today I'm joined, this way, with the legend himself, the greatest of all time, ex-player, Mr. Motherboard expert, Gavin Bonshor.
Well, hello there, Mr. Hicks. How are you this evening?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Yourself?
I'm not too bad. I'm just doing a lot of Intel Z490 motherboard testing at the moment, which is my doing a lot of that at the moment.
Keeping busy.
Yeah, keep on non-stop, mate. I'm always busy, one way or another.
Well, thank you for taking the time to come and sit down with me on this Friday evening to have a quick chat. I appreciate
Not a problem. I won't be drinking any vodka or whiskey. Don't worry.
Makes a change, but no, I take it. That's good. It's good. You can always do that after.
Don't worry, I will.
Good. Right, so today, guys, we're talking AMD, and it's strictly AMD. So, yeah.
Well, but what specifically about AMD are we talking about today?
Well, there's a few things, isn't there? We're going to start with the 400 series motherboards and the recent news that's come about with that.
Oh, so to start this off, obviously when AMD announced the AM4 platform, they announced that the socket support the AM4 socket would support generations up to and including 2020. The AMD announced, much to the dismay of many tech tubers, influencers, technology journalists like myself, that they weren't going to enable support for Ryzen 4000 and Zen 3 on its older B450 and X470 motherboards. So, that's pretty much it. And AMD did a massive U-turn, where obviously, which they made a public statement, basically saying they'd listened to every analyst. They watched every YouTube video. They see every comment on Reddit, because there was a lot of backlash on Reddit about this as well.
There was a lot.
And they did a U-turn and announced that Ryzen 4000 and Zen 3 will be supported on B450 and X470. Now it's more, not to go totally in depth off the rails into it. It's more of a statement now, and they're going to work out the finer details about how they're going to implement it later on.
They are, and that's the bit that sorry to just kind of completely cut you off there, but that's the bit that gets me the most kind of not worried, but like I'm a bit like like how are they going to do this? Because it's you know, I've heard already some stories on the grapevine, so to speak, about, you know, like potential avenues that they could take, and this is obviously due to one of the things we're going to talk about, and that's like non-max boards, essentially, like having 16 megs of BIOS. So
a lot of the B450 boards specifically generally have a 16 megabyte BIOS versus, you know, 32 megabyte BIOS, which does present itself issues, because obviously looking at all of the featured CPUs that each of these BIOSes need to support every single family group of Ryzen processors.
That's it.
So, you know, you've got, like, you know, the original Ryzen 1000, Zen 1, and then you've got your Ryzen 2000 series, then you've got Zen 2, Ryzen 3000 series, and each of these different, you know, families, I'll call them families of processors, will to support one of them, you really need to support all of them, because you can't promise support for Ryzen 3000 CPUs but only support half of them, because it just consumers would get confused, and it would, you know, they'd buy a chip and it wouldn't work, and they'd be like, oh, what's going on? So, you know, the issue is with say a 16 megabyte BIOS chip, so some of the things you've got to factor in is, you know, like the AMD CPU spectrum for Zen and Zen 2. you know, is about 80. I would say it's more than, without looking directly at it, you're looking at more than 80 processors in total across all of the families, because you've got the pro CPUs as well, and the APUs. So you've got that. It's a minefield, and not to forget. I mean, we'll elaborate on one point.
Yeah.
Is one of the issues that you've got to consider with having these such small BIOS chips in comparison to all the CPUs to support, is that it's got to fit the graphical user interface of the firmware and the BIOS itself onto that as well. So that takes up a considerable amount of space on it. So you've got to factor that in when you're considering offering CPU support.
That's it, and that space that Gav's referring to there is the AJASA code. So obviously, all of these codes take up a certain amount of space.
The AJASA, yeah.
So they're, you know, obviously, like the more processors you have, the more space it takes up, and like that's the problem. Basically, is that like with these 16 meg BIOS chips that a lot of the B450 boards have, just there isn't enough space on these 16 meg chips to cover 4000 series and 3 that's about to come out.
Potentially, what I think AMD will do, because like I said, they've made a statement, you know, they are going to support them, Ryzen 4000 on B450 and X470, but they haven't released final details of how they're going to do this. What I think it will come down to is the motherboard vendors themselves. They will supply the code, and they may have to make some reductions on the amount of CPUs that it supports. So if they're going to support Ryzen 4000, there might be a specific firmware that removes support for all the chips and just has support for, say, Ryzen 3000 and Ryzen 4000 chips. So end of the day, they've sold these boards with these BIOS chips. The most common end user isn't going to even know what the BIOS chip does, as opposed to, you know, they just plug in and it works. That's what they want. They're not going to be. It's not like motherboard vendors can just ship out new BIOS chips, because they need solder into the board itself. So you've got issues in that regard. So, like I said, what I think they will do is they will release firmware, and it will cut out some older families. So if people want to use a Ryzen 4000 CPU, they'll have to update the firmware to do that, and it will remove support for some families of these chips.
Yeah, I agree. The thing that bothers me though is that it's like exactly how they implement that. Like what I feel like they should do, and this has definitely been talked about already, but is, you know, things like where you have like your older generation CPU, you put the like the new BIOS on, and in my opinion, this is what I think they should do, and it's like it's to only support Zen 3, like with the new update, so that, like, you know, you get your new 4000 series CPU. You know, you've got it like ready to put in, so you have your old chip, like let's just say for argument's sake it's Ryzen 5 2600.
Okay.
You download the BIOS that's you know, the new BIOS that supports Zen 3. You install it there and then obviously, like, because you've installed it and it only has Zen 3, you know, on it won't boot anymore, and so then that would be the point where you put in the new chip, and then sorry, and then from like then on it would just like, you just only be able to use like 4000 series.
Yeah, so you won't be able to reverse. You won't be able to go backwards.
Yeah, from what I hear, like that's going to be a thing anyway. Like they won't, like, once you update the BIOS to Zen 3, then there won't be an option to go back anyway. So you have to.
I know what you're saying. I mean, there is two possible workarounds. Now, one of them isn't, you know, something that can be implemented now. It can be implemented in the future to help alleviate this issue. One is AMD could supply like an upgrade chip, which isn't really. It's just enough to get the board going to to perform to. So there might be like a Ryzen 2000 series like dummy chip. When I say dummy chip, it's not a chip that will be able to do anything. It's just like a cheap bit of silicon that will get the motherboard to boot to post for you to update the firmware. Now they may supply that. It's been done before.
Makes sense, yeah.
And then you can obviously update your board, because a lot of these boards that are in retailers in the channels in sitting on shelves you won't be able to just buy that and put a 4000 series CPU in it straight away,
Sure.
which is the issue. That is the main issue, really, to this. So either AMD will supply a chip of some kind to allow users to do that. Alternatively, there is boards that use a feature called BIOS flashback. A lot of the boards, well, not a lot of the boards, I'd say, but a select few of the boards. I know quite a lot of the Asus boards do this. You can actually flash the firmware of the board without a CPU, graphics card, or memory in the board.
That's it, yeah.
That would be one way of doing it, but obviously the boards are already out. So if the board has the feature, great. If it doesn't, then there needs to be some kind of, rollout from AMD with like an upgrade kit to upgrade the boards.
Yeah,
now,
I hadn't actually thought of that, to be honest. And to be fair, that sounds pretty good.
That's what they should. That's my opinion. That's what they should do, because, I mean, moving on to the next point, it kind of correlates with it. Should AMD have anticipated the reaction from the voice of the people, from the communities online, from the influencers, the YouTubers, the tech journalists, when they announced it? It was obvious that there was going to be a lot of uproar, because people are like, oh my god, they're just pulling an Intel, they're releasing the same chip on a new socket and making you buy a new board. AMD doesn't do this, but you had the same issue with AMD in previous generations. So you have AM2, AM2 Plus, AM3, AM3 Plus. So you could kind of call... I mean, it'd be a lot easier if AMD implemented a similar strategy. So AM4 and AM4 Plus. AM4 Plus, it's the same socket, but it has to support natively for the newer CPUs and no support for older ones.
That makes sense, yeah.
I mean,
they could have called that B550. They could have called that. They could have just said it was
AM4 Plus.
Yeah, AM4 Plus, and probably I don't think there would have been as much of an uproar. I don't know. It depends. To be fair, because a reviewer or someone that knows what they're talking about would have got a hold of the socket and gone, well, the socket's not actually different, so why is it called AM4 Plus? The
point is, by naming it AM4 Plus, it would not fix any of the issues that has been presented. They released the upgrade path. I think it was 2016 or whatever. I haven't researched into that, because at the moment I don't need to know it, so my brain gets fed full of information anyway.
Yeah,
but you've got this platform that lasts for multiple generations, and AMD are good at doing that. Like I said,
yeah, they are. I mean, the AM4's been out for what, 4 years now? Is 2020 is the 4th year, isn't it?
I think it was 2016. Yeah, 2016. So I think I was right. Yeah. Sorry.
So 60,
if I'm wrong, let us know in the comments. I've checked. So
I mean, if you include 2016, then 2020 is actually the 5th year. But there's also the argument that could be made that they did say that they were going to be supporting AM4 through or to 2020.
Yeah, they did.
But
that comes down to interpretation, really.
It does 100%. Yeah.
It is 2020 now. It's a platform being released in B550 is a chipset being released in 2020. But it seems as though everyone wants support for Ryzen 4000, which is, there isn't an actual date set for it, and we don't know yet. But like I said,
I can't imagine it'd be too far away with the recent news. This the stuff we'll talk about next. Funny enough, which is the B550 launch.
Yeah.
But there's been some news there, so we'll get to that shortly. But
I get you.
We're going to take a quick look at a write-up that Michael's done for us here at Player. So I'm just going to load it up. Here we go. And this is obviously what he's written about B450 and the Zen 3 compatibility. And he's titled it AMD Bow to Community Pressure.
Which, in reality, it is exactly what they've done, and they've made no attempt to hide the fact.
100%. And I also think they're using it as like in a positive way. Like they're basically like, you know what, you've like you touched on this earlier, but you've basically, you've said you want it, and we've listened, so yeah, you can have it. Actually, we've changed our minds.
Yeah, because it creates such a I can't swear, but it creates such an S storm that AMD had no other choice. In reality, it comes to the question, should AMD ever even done this, even announced it in the first place? Why did they do this and then do a U-turn? It's very political.
100%. I also feel like it's like an attempt to take a bit of the focus away from Intel's Z490 launch as well. So
see, I'm mixed on that idea. I mean, you can put a tinfoil hat on and think everything. Samsung announced this to take the mobile CPU away from Huawei's. Or from ARM CPUs and x86 instruction cycles, blah blah blah. It's end of the day, AMD was planning on releasing B550 around this time anyway. Around the time it's being released anyway. Computex, that's it, yeah. Now it's been moved back to September this year because of COVID-19. But whatever, we won't mention that word ever again. But yeah, I don't think it's so much why they've done it to take away the sting out of Intel's launch, because end of the day, AMD got heavily criticised for this. They got some negative. They got, bad news travels fast.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Compared to good news, it travels fast. So there'll be more people that know about the fact this isn't supported than people now know about that it is supported. So
100%. It's they definitely got as much bad press as they did good.
They did get good press though. Can you call it good press in the way that they're showing that they're listening to users? It's pretty bad press.
That's probably one of the only positives I think that they can actually take from this.
It's bad press if they were going to do this anyway and just announced it as to say, well, we're actually a company who listens to its consumers.
It could well have been that the marketing guys there were just like, well, let's just say this, and then if they backlash, we'll just say, jokes on us. You were right. Yeah, we'll give you what you want.
You've got to remember that Intel are a substantially bigger company than AMD are in terms of everything, in terms of revenue, research and design, like expenditure, revenue.
Yeah.
AMD's only recently just been positive in positive cash flow because of Ryzen. So that like people thinking that it was AMD are just trying to take the sting out of Intel. Yes, they're trying to take market share off them, which is something that they are doing. They are creeping up consistently. Due to numerous reasons, which is probably another video, but AMD is putting pressure on Intel to release better products. That's the pressure because Intel want the market share that they had a dominance over for generations. They want it back. A lot of people are switching to Ryzen because it's more cost effective.
Yeah. It's
better performance. It's more efficient in terms of power consumption. It's the whole, and it's like I said, it's on 7 nanometers as well, so it's on a better process. Will Intel skip 10 nanometer? Probably not. But they generally keep the roadmaps for I think the roadmaps for Intel are about 3 years ahead, and then they stick to it. So they'll generate these roadmaps and then they'll stick to it. And even if it's a bad idea, they'll still go ahead with it because it's on the roadmap. With the CEOs like Brian Kaczynski and stuff like that.
Sure.
yeah. So yeah, what's the next topic?
So I'm quickly just going to go back to the write up that Michael did.
Sorry.
One thing I just wanted to mention is that, funnily enough, he actually mentioned here. He basically just says that this also isn't like the first time that this has happened. You know, the same thing happened with B350 and X470 when you know, they were basically forced to issue a statement reassuring people that there was going to be support for Zen 2.
Yeah,
so,
albeit without PCI.
yeah,
You know, without PCIe 4.
yeah, that's it. Yeah,
That a lot of the issue was, but a lot of the main concern with consumers were, oh, I'm buying a PCI Gen 4 chip, and I've got a PCI Gen 3 board. Can I have Gen 4 on boards? And if you remember going back to it, a lot of motherboard vendors were like, well, we support PCI 4. It's fine. We've put drivers in to enable it. And then AMD came out and said, look, it is not official support.
yeah.
That was pretty much it.
Yep. So
I like Michael's article is good. It touches on a lot of points, so
it does.
You should definitely check it out.
A lot of stuff. Yeah, I'll put a link actually to everything we talk about in the description below, so you guys can click on it and go and give it a read. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff on there. It just kind of makes you think actually. So yeah, it's good. I think that pretty much sums that up. Actually, that's 21 minutes of basically talking about that. So
Yeah,
we should probably move on to the second topic.
Yeah, AMD, stop scaring us into creating an army online and smashing you into pieces and bowing into our demands.
How dare you, scumbags!
I want I want 128 gig Threadripper 228 gig. I want 128 core Threadripper 4000 chip. Get it done. Army, go out and tell AMD how to do it.
Yeah,
get them done.
Exactly.
I want it in my system now.
Exactly that. Exactly that.
So I want PCI Gen 5. Screw it.
While you're here, Mr. Gavin, we're gonna talk about B550 now. So hello everyone, B550 time. We might as well just start with the article that you wrote yesterday for AnandTech.
I wrote, yes, because I am the motherboard editor for AnandTech, if people didn't already know that.
Yeah.
If you don't know, you know that now. So obviously motherboards are kind of my thing. So when it comes to chipsets and motherboards, that's where a lot of my knowledge lies. So yeah.
That's it. So I figured that while we were here, we might as well just quickly brush over exactly what you get from the B550 chipset.
Okay, so do you want me to give a quick rundown on B550 specs?
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, I'll also load up the table that you added on your AnandTech, on the AnandTech website. Yeah, and then that way the guys can see what we're talking about at the same time.
Right. So firstly, I'll start off with the biggest benefit from B550 over B450 is, and I use the word official, PCIe Gen 4 support. Yeah. Because it's primarily designed as AMD's more budget-focused option as opposed to X570, which is its more flagship premium desktop models. There's a little bit of issue there, which I'll mention in a bit. So in terms of specs, comparing like X570 to B550 and B450, now the interface from the CPU, and I have to stress, this is from the CPU itself. So the one thing B550 differs from X570 is the chipset itself is PCI Gen 3. So B550's chipset is basically a souped up version of a B450 chipset with PCI Gen 4 lanes from the CPU, but it still has PCI Gen 3 lanes from the chipset.
Yeah.
So you get 20 lanes from the CPU, which is general purpose. In total, you've got 24 PCIe lanes, which are separated between different slots and so forth. One thing B550 is included officially over B450 is support for up to two. Now we'll talk about this in a second, but up to two USB 3.1 Gen 2 ports. So likes of your 10 gigabits, 10 gigasecond ports,
10 gig a second,
USB ports. So now it's got the same level of 3.1 Gen 1 ports. So you still have up to 6. Now it's up to the manufacturer itself to add things like extra USB controller, as media controllers, redrivers, where a lot of these, 20 gigasec ports come from, like your Type C, which isn't Thunderbolt. It's like kind of half the speed of Thunderbolt, which is 40 gigasec.
Yeah.
Now it will support officially 6 SATA ports. Some B550 boards will have 8 ports. Some will have 4. We're just repurposing the lanes for other areas, but the ones with 8 over 6, they've got an as media SATA controller, so you'll have 6 ports that will support, like RAID 0, 1, 10 arrays, and you'll have the other 2 ports are just general SATA ports, like you can't RAID them really. Still dual channel. There's no integrated Wi-Fi MAC into it, so vendors have to implement their own, wireless options. It's not embedded into the chipset like it is on Z490, Z390.
More on that in a minute.
Yeah, don't currently know its TDP yet, but one benefit is that they don't have chipset fans, like X570 boards do. So they don't need, active cooling solutions, and obviously they will support PB2 and XFR2 overclocking. And one interesting thing is as well for B550 over B450, some B550 boards, not all of them, offer bifurcation of the, the 16 lanes coming from. Cause like you said, you've got 20 lanes, 16 for like graphics cards, 4 for M.2. So usually the top M.2 slot is PCI Gen 4 times 4 from the CPU. Any others on the boards will be PCI Gen 3. So that has to be made clear.
That's the difference between B550 and X470 as well.
Yeah,
just for reference.
To touch more on the PCI bifurcation, B550 as I said, some boards will offer official support for 2-way NVIDIA SLI. So instead of your times 16, you'll have 2 slots at times 8, and then the bottom slot, which comes from the chipset itself.
Yeah, I hear that's going to be quite widespread as well. So that would be interesting to see.
Yeah. And one thing, I'm probably going a bit ahead of myself here, but what a lot of the B550 boards have is a 2.5 gig Ethernet controller, which it's the start of the market shifting from gigabit as standard to 2.5 gig. Cheaper boards will still have gigabit. Some will have 2.5 gigabit and 1 gigabit ports, like the B550 Tomahawk from LSI, and some will just have 2.5 gig. So we're starting to see. Now, ultimately, it drives cost up. So compared from B550 to B450, there are some very expensive B550 models, which is very disappointing.
I think that's gonna shock a lot of people. But then they also need to remember that you have to pay the extra to get these extra things. So it's. I mean, ultimately it depends what the actual prices are, as to whether. But I just don't think. Also thinking about it realistically is that you can't expect to get I wouldn't expect to get any B550 board for B450 prices, not with not with what they're offering, if that makes sense.
Right. So you can buy the most expensive, because Asus are the only vendor so far to announce pricing.
Yeah. If
I was going to spend, the most expensive B550 board from Asus is $280. For $280, I can buy an X570 motherboard, which will have 3 PCIe 4 PCIe 4 M.2 slots.
Yeah. Whereas
B550 has 1, and the rest are PCI Gen 3, and it's a more premium chipset. Everything's PCI Gen 4.
Yeah, that's it.
So it's the market shifting.
I agree. Funnily enough, there's 11 B550 boards that Asus are releasing as well. So there's obviously like that crossover, like at the top end, like $280 for like a B550 board, I think that's that's a lot in my opinion.
I said $180 would be where you'd get to the point where you think, right, I'd start looking at an X570 board.
Yeah,
but
I think
280 is like,
it's way over. Yeah.
What? Who's going to buy a $280 B550 board when you can just buy a $280? You could buy looking like, I'm going to do a quick check right now, because I'm doing it in dollars because obviously I'm an AnandTech writer.
No, that's
so I work in dollars. But
I mean, to be honest, like what it is in dollars is probably going to be the equivalent amount in pounds anyway. So, you know, you say $280, it's probably going to be £280.
Yeah, I mean, like so the price
ish, like, it's pretty close.
Yeah, so like if I go on Newegg, I mean, you can't see it, but I can see it.
That's fine.
It's okay. So you can get the the ASRock X570 Tai Chi for $290.
Yeah.
And the Tai Chi is a really nice board, and it's a lot better spec in terms, you know, it's full PCI Gen 4. You know,
I'm not writing them off, but like I think, you know, like B550 is 100% coming in as a replacement for B450, and B450 made a name for itself as being
budget,
like the affordable, the affordable chipset for like AMD CPUs.
It is the B chipsets. Sorry to cut in. The B chipsets are essentially the more budget focused, whereas the X is like extreme performance. You know,
like when I just feel like when it gets to the point where there's starting to be crossover between, you know, like the budget chipset and then the enthusiast chipset, then that shouldn't be a thing.
It's specifically a problem for AMD though. I mean, if you look at when Zen 1 launched, X370 flagship boards for that for that chipset. Bearing in mind that a lot more premium controllers and stuff went and power deliveries and stuff went into Intel's boards because they were selling more. X570 boards, X370 boards were a lot cheaper than X570 flagship. So your X370 flagship, you're looking at like $400. An X570 flagship, you're talking $900, $800.
Yeah, you are, yeah.
Like because they've put more controllers on, but they're charging more. The prices have gone up. They're charging a lot more for the flagship boards now, and as a consequence, mid-range boards. I mean, if you go back 5 years, maybe 6 years, a mid-range board was not $400. A mid-range board was $150, $180. $200 if you wanted like a really good mid-range board.
Yeah. So
the pricing's gone up, but as a consequence, it's hitting budget boards like B550 and the chipsets because they're just putting like 208. Like I'm disgusted at the 208. Like why they'd want to release a $280 B550? Yeah, it gives users options. You know, I want to get $280 B550 board. Great. But you can just buy an X570 board for the same price. It'll do the same things, but better. You have more PCI Gen 4 support, which is, you know, one of the main benefits of a Ryzen 3000 chip.
Do a lot of the X570 boards that have come out, do they have like 2.5 gig Ethernet as well?
Yeah,
I mean, something I personally actually don't know. Like, it's a little bit naughty, isn't it? But like,
no, it's okay. So I covered like 99% of X570 boards when it came out at launch, and I dissect them into what, like, terms of 10 gig Ethernet, 5 gig Ethernet, 2.5 gig, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there was about 8 or 9 boards with 2.5 gig Ethernet on X570. There was one board with 5 gig Ethernet and about 5 boards with 10 gig Ethernet. Now, that's something to consider. When you're getting 2.5, when you're getting better, it comes down to networking. You know, if your purchasing decision comes down more to networking, if you've got 2.5 gig Ethernet switch, or like from your router, or you've got the capabilities to run this on your network, and you've got the use case scenarios for it, great. Why are you not looking at a better platform? Why don't you just get you could just get a cheap B450 board and put a 2.5 gig NIC in the PCIe. Like,
you could, to be fair, yeah.
Why? Like, it's good it has it. It's great that that the vendors and the industry is starting to move forward past gigabit now.
Yeah.
Great. I've been championing this for a couple of years.
Yeah, that was to be fair, that was one of the when I was doing the research for this video with you earlier on. It was one of the things that stood out to me as being like, oh, cool, like, you know, it's finally like gigabit, you know, it's finally gonna start taking a back seat, and I hope that trend is actually something that continues. To be fair, because
it'll continue.
It needs to. Is, you know, it's definitely like gigabit Ethernet's definitely starting to show its age.
But you need an ecosystem for it. You need the setup for it. You need like the switch. You need the router. You need your NAS. You need other systems.
Yeah,
you need a use case for it. Otherwise, it's pointless. There's no point in having it.
I agree. I also feel like but you know, for like motherboard manufacturers to start releasing like 2.5 gig Ethernet controllers, then I kind of feel like that'll push, like, you know, switch makers and like broadband router makers, maybe not them, but like you know, like switch makers especially, to just release like a 10 port, like, even if it was like, say, like 5 gig, because obviously it's backwards compatible, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just switch prices are coming down. You know, they are manufacturing more switches that are cheaper. A lot, especially unmanaged switches. Managed switches are still expensive, but unmanaged switches they are coming down in price. So you're talking like £1,000 a couple of years ago. Now you're looking at maybe $300.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. I like that. That's you know, that's obviously the way it needs to go. But I think, like, by making, especially like 2.5 gig, like, kind of pushing it so that it's like gonna be on like pretty much like almost every single board that's coming out on B550, almost. Then obviously that is a step in the right direction.
I agree.
I can imagine. Not too sure even about like Z490s, like Z490 that's coming. Like I guess a lot of them will probably have the same sort of thing. So yeah, so like in that respect, it's kind of good.
But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. You know, like we were saying about B550, the vendors have now pulled the trigger. Obviously, things are still under NDA. It's on. Yeah. Can't even talk about the NDA really. But all of the features and stuff, you know, all of the vendors have come out and said this is what we're offering. B550. They've not released all of the models. There's going to be more than what they've announced. You know, Asus have got a wide stack out, but they have region specific boards as well. So they'll have like specific boards for the Asian market, you know, for the Eastern market, for the US. They have dependent on customers as well. So you know, there's going to be a lot more. They'll probably be close to 50, 60 boards.
I also read on their Edge Up page, that'll be in the description as well. I'm just going to kind of quickly show you guys that they said one of the things about the reason for them having like up to 11 B550 boards was that so that some of them, to make them a bit more affordable, like would come without things like Wi-Fi 6 and like the Bluetooth 5.1 controllers. Now I can't imagine that there would actually be like a massive reduction in price to not have those things.
But it's still a reduction. I mean,
yeah, it's still a reduction. Like certain people might not even care about, like, they might not even want Wi-Fi on their boards or Bluetooth. They just might not even care about it. So I mean, at least having the option there.
Well, so here's an example, and I had this issue today, and I have the culprit right here. So on my main system, obviously I've got it connected in Ethernet, obviously. Yeah. For some reason, my Ethernet cable's dead. Just randomly died. Just randomly died. So before I thought to myself, wait a minute, right? Do I have another Ethernet cable about? So I quickly connected to the Wi-Fi on the system, and I was back online. I was in the middle of doing stuff that I needed to be access to the internet to do.
Sure.
So having that it's like to me, having Wi-Fi on this system is redundancy. If my wired networking goes down for some whatever reason, the switch dies, because my networking's downstairs and I've got a switch upstairs and I've got it connected, you know, cable and stuff. it's a level of redundancy for me. Like, I can connect to the wireless if my wired goes wrong, like it did
Yeah,
today.
I like that. I
But
mean,
this wasn't set up for this, by the way. It actually happened.
Yeah.
I was really cheesed off. I did find another Ethernet cable, and I swapped things about.
Fair.
It's redundancy. Some people don't want features. They reduced a lot of them. So like MSI would release like X570 board, X470 boards with like Wi-Fi enabled versions, non-Wi-Fi versions.
I mean, but like
by one now. For the price of how much it really costs to implement it for like an AX200 or AX201 Intel chip wireless interface, it's okay. The end user is going to pay an extra $10 to $20 for it.
I was going to say it's not a huge. It won't be a huge markup or a huge.
If you've only got a set budget,
$20 is $20.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
But one of the advantages as well with Asus with the edge up, as I mentioned, I actually mentioned about BIOS flashback, talking about the B450 X470 debacle. The BIOS flashback will be on B550 Asus boards, on ROG Strix and Tough, so not the Prime. So all you need to do, you can update the board with nothing more than a power supply and a flash drive, USB flash drive. So that's kind of something. So maybe something in the future, because I think when AMD go beyond Zen 2, so Ryzen 4000, like Ryzen 5000, there is gonna be new motherboards. It is gonna be a new chipset. It will be a new socket most likely as well. I mean, nothing's confirmed, but looking at how the AM4's lasted a long time, and it's now at the end of its life. They've still got another generation of Ryzen chips to release later on this year sometime, and having BIOS flashback, implementing it now on all the boards. If they'd have done this earlier, there wouldn't be so much issue with the compatibility issues, because you could just flash whatever board you want, whatever BIOS you want, regardless of what chip you've got, and be able to support a specific family of chips. That would have made the issue so much easier. But it's always, hindsight is a great thing, right? Everything's better in hindsight, So, but that's my take on it. B550. To summarize B550 from my perspective, great chipset. Not as cheap as it should be. There is going to be cheaper models. Great, there's going to be premium models. Prices are going to start at about from Asus, because like I said, Asus are the only manufacturer to release pricing. The cheapest board from them is $134. You could get a B450 Tomahawk for $110, like when it launched, and that was quite a decent B450 board.
Yeah, it was. So, I reviewed it for player personally, and it was very good. It's a very good board. Yeah.
When I do my quarterly motherboard guides, the B450 Tomahawk has been in quite a few of them, because it's solid board for the price.
And it's no wonder as well that the Max is selling so well with 3000 series CPUs as well, because it's just a good board.
Well, you've now got the Ryzen 5 3300X, which is the new budget go-to processor from AMD for price to performance, and the 3100 as well, which great chips. In all honesty, obviously Ian, Dr. Ian Cuttress, who please put a link down to Tech Potato, his personal YouTube channel. He's my boss at AnandTech, he's my mentor. Not to blow his trumpet too much, but when it comes to knowledge about chipsets, CPUs, and architectures, he's the man to go to. But he did a review on the 3300X, and he actually recently did a review on another chip, which kind of got forgotten. The Ryzen 5 3600, which is Amazon's best-selling CPU.
Yeah.
He took a picture of it wrapped in money. It's it was quite cool.
Yeah.
But But yeah, make sure you put a link into Tech Potato because
Will do. Yeah, no worries at all.
he's got good content, and you know Formula One, so he likes his Formula One as well.
Yeah, I'll have to have a chat with him sometime.
It's great. But yeah, like, is there anything you can add to B550 that we haven't covered?
No, I don't think so. I was just looking at how long the video's been so far, so it's probably a good time to call it a day.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think we'll just leave it there, guys. But yeah, I mean, obviously, sound off in the comments below. Give us your thoughts. I'll try and come on YouTube and answer as many as I can. So yeah, go ahead.
To all of the references we used today, they'll be all in the description.
Yeah,
all links to player articles, the AnandTech articles. Obviously, I use the AnandTech articles because I work for them. Obviously, yeah, player of obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for having me on, Dave.
No, you're very welcome.
I like to talk a lot about motherboards, and I like to talk. As you know, I warned you about this before.
yeah.
This could have easily been like a 4-hour video.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, it's good. So we'll definitely get you back. Definitely get you back again soon. I think like an Intel video. I think, you know, for us to sit down and make another video about talking about Intel Z490 10th gen launch and stuff like that would be good.
Which is what I'm testing right next to me right now. Right, what I'm testing.
Right as one of my pictures just randomly falls off the wall. That's quite funny.
Wow.
Yeah. So thanks again, Gav. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. Thank you for watching.
Yeah. Thanks for stopping by, guys. And yeah, we'll see you again soon.
Ciao for now.
Ciao for now.